To you live from Johannesburg over the next hour, an in-depth look at the big local, international and African stories that are shaping our world this evening. This is Tonight with Jane Dutton. Tonight, a dark day for sport and a massive setback for female athletes. Semenya has lost her case against the IAAF. That means she will have to lower her testosterone levels to compete. What a barbaric ruling. What does this mean for Caster and other athletes with high testosterone levels? The verdict, which will mainly impact African athletes, smacks of sore losers and racism to me. We speak to Sascock and the scientist advising Caster's legal team. Is it time to dump black economic empowerment with only a few still benefiting? It's not working and is fertile ground for corruption. We ask, what's the alternative? The raging battle behind assisted suicide. Shouldn't we be allowed to help people die if they are in extraordinary pain? Why not? Even Desmond Tutu thinks it's the right thing to do. Disrespect, violence and massive pay disparities, the reality facing the majority of South Africa's workforce. 25 years from apartheid and very little has changed. What's going wrong here? Why is it so hard to do the right thing and crush unscrupulous bosses and practices? We speak to COSATU, Solidarity and SAFTU about bringing dignity back to the workers. But first, the news. A massive win for former Honoured Coal employees. They are now shareholders in the Mpumalanga mining company. Mineral Resources Minister Gwede Mantashe officially handed over a 50% stake in the mine previously held by mining company Exero. The other shares are held by Westcoal. Mantashe hopes it'll prove to be a milestone for the mining industry.
It's a new model in South Africa. Nobody ever had faith in it. We tried it before. It's a good experiment to say if workers own an entity, they will be able to take care of that entity. They don't see it as an external intervention. They become part of it. We're hoping this experiment will be a success and we can go all over the world and tell people that when workers own substantial part of a company, they take ownership of that company.
Ahead of the elections and 6 days ahead of the elections, and all three main political parties held Workers' Day rallies to push for votes. President Cyril Ramaphosa has urged COSATU members to fight factionalism in the tripartite alliance. He was speaking at the Union Federation's May Day rally in Claremont outside Durban.
Comrades, it is on a date like this, as you celebrate your unity, as you celebrate the continued existence of COSATU, that you must also resolve that you are going to promote practices that will ensure that we have unity and work against practices that promote factionalism, that promote division in our ranks.
DA leader Mmusi Maimane says voting for the ANC is equal to voting for corruption. He was speaking at his party's Workers' Day rally at the Hillsong Church in Cape Town.
He says, yes, the ANC captured the state, but please vote for us. I want to say it in simple language. He says, we stole from your future. Give us a chance to steal even more. We are here to say to them, we are not here. We want to say this one thing. The best branch of the ANC is in heaven. The next branch of the ANC is going to be in Pollsmoor prison, not far from here, when we put 15 years for corrupt politicians.
An EFF leader, Julius Malema, says the ANC must come clean about what it did with the money allocated for Alexandra's renewal. He was speaking at his party's May Day rally in the township.
Comrades, they took out money, billions, ditwile, barona le Alexander renewal, when Alex was turning 100 years. We don't see any renewal here. All we see is a dirty place, an abandoned place, a place of forgotten people. Paul Mashatile must tell us, where is the Alexander renewal money?
The regulations that we are introducing are there to protect the sanctity of fair and open competition, and that's really what we're here to defend.
Free and fair or racist and sexist, the justification behind the awful court battle for Caster Semenya's dignity. The Olympic champion lost her landmark fight against IAAF rules, forcing hyperandrogenic athletes to lower their testosterone levels if they wish to compete as women. Sometimes it's better to react with no reaction. That was Caster Semenya's tweet response to her devastating loss against the athletics governing body, the IAAF. Semenya's case just isn't about sport or sex or gender, but also raises issues of ethics, politics and science. So what does this decision mean for how the athletics community treats athletes who defy societal norms? Joining me now is SASCOC's Lwandile Simelane, and via Skype from Cape Town we have the sports scientist Ross Tucker, who was part of Semenya's team of experts. Welcome both of you. Ross, let me start off with you. You were part of the team. I should imagine you devastated at this outcome.
Yeah, extremely devastated. We heard last night what the decision was, and trying to process, because everyone had convinced themselves that we provided such a strong argument for why this regulation should be set aside. I think we went there and we offered what I think was good evidence and good arguments to show that the evidence, the scientific research on which the policy was based, was flawed. We felt that it was unreasonable, and we were quite confident that it would be set aside based on the historical precedents and arguments that preceded that. So when the decision came out, it was a huge surprise, and it's just extremely disappointing, not for us personally, because we're a couple degrees removed from the issue, but for Semenya, and also for all the other athletes, because she isn't the only one. One must bear that in mind. She's obviously the South African one, but there are half a dozen to a dozen athletes around the world who've all been affected by this, and you can only feel sorry for those athletes today.
Lwandile Simelane, I should imagine you feel pretty much the same. I mean, a dark day for women in sport, isn't it?
Unfortunately, dark day. I mean, we are as disappointed as an organization. We are as disappointed as a Women in Sports Commission of SASCOC. We are generally disappointed, I think, as a sporting nation in South Africa.
What sort of impact do you think this will have? What are you going to see almost immediately?
I think for us it's going to open a lot of discussions in the sports world that we haven't been having throughout the years. The fact that, and the reality that we have to now understand that there has to be a juxtaposition between ethics, between politics and between competition in itself. We can't just focus on what's on the field anymore. We have to look at how, you know, our policies and our procedures are affecting the human rights and the well-being of our athletes.
Ross, I mean, you were as pretty close as you can get, certainly closer than we could be to this case. What do you think was behind it? Where does race play into this? I mean, was there strong scientific evidence from their point of view that could be fed into this decision?
Short answer, no. And that was, look, we try to hang our hat on multiple hooks in the arguments that were made. So the scientific evidence was one of a few arguments. The human rights issue, the social issue, the performance issue, all of those things were on the table, and they were all discussed and presented to the courts. I felt, and maybe I'm revealing my own bias as a scientist, I felt that we should be able to win it on the basis of science alone. And now I haven't read the full detailed decision by CAS, so I can't really explain. It would be speculative to try and guess at what they reasoned.
Ross, tell us a little more about the science behind it from your point of view and theirs.
So in 2015, there was a court case around the previous version of this policy. And that court case was argued by two parties, the IAAF and an Indian athlete called Duty Chand. And they argued concept and theory. That's all either side had. And Cass basically said, it's all good and well, you present yours, but bring us evidence. And so Cass's words literally were that the numbers matter. And so the IAAF went away to do this research, and they gathered data from their own World Championships, 2011, 13. And they put this together, and that is the research that we argued was fundamentally flawed, because it used very poor statistics. I'm not going to get into the minutiae here, but poor statistics, poor control of what we'd call confounding variables. They didn't gather the samples in a well-controlled way. They didn't analyze the samples properly. They had errors in their data. And we felt that that undermined their arguments so much that in the end there was no basis to conclude that athletes with high testosterone had an advantage compared to low testosterone within women.
Okay. Loandile, if there is no basis from a scientific point of view, what do you think is driving this? I mean, a lot of the sports that will be affected and the athletes that will be affected are Africans, sports that Africans dominate. How big a role do you think that played?
That's a massive role. I mean, I think we have to look at it on the basis, on a humanistic basis, first of all. You know, is it gender issues? Yes, it's a gender issue. Is it a race issue? Yes, it's a race issue. You know, is it a continental issue, even the placement of Africa in sports? You know, all of those things can be speculated. But the reality of it is that we understand now that sports is behind in understanding these complexities. And we need to now start getting with it. We need the younger generation to lead these discussions. We need everybody to come to the table and say, hey, we've got a massive shortcoming here. We don't understand these things. We need to do better.
And Ross, do you think it's a case about being a bad loser? Because I'm just wondering how transgender females who lower their testosterone levels will be able to perform now. I mean, will it basically take them out of the game?
So a couple of things that I think are quite important. Transgender is different from DSD. Caster Semenya is not transgender. When
yes,
we talk
both. Yes.
Yeah, so when we talk about transgender, we're talking about a man, born man, grown-up man, adult male who undergoes a transition to complete female, and it's reasonable and fair to expect those people to lower their testosterone. The issue here is whether someone born female, raised female, grows up female has to do the same. The policy basically treats them as if they're the same, and I don't think that they are. So that's an important distinction. I must also just take issue on I don't know that one can conclude that it's racist if you don't know the identity of all the athletes with DSDs. And I do know those. I'm not going to reveal those, but they're not limited to one continent. They are overrepresented in one continent. But I would be cautious about making that argument. I think there are other reasons this decision has gone the way it has, but perhaps I'm naive, but I can't bring myself to see that this was a racially motivated decision. And
what do you think the other reasons are? I mean, was there enormous pressure from other athletes? Clearly, it's just saying it's not fair.
I think that's a massive part of it. I don't know that that was overt and malicious, but I think the IAAF found itself in the middle of this tension where they were being pulled in one direction and by that pressure. I don't know whether sponsors applied some pressure on them, but ultimately the IAAF, as the governing body for the sport, has taken it upon themselves to say that we have to ensure fairness for all athletes, and therefore we have to intervene in these athletes who have high testosterone. Now that's where one introduces the science. Is that justified? Is that necessary? Is that proportional? I say no. Their argument is yes. And I just want to make the point, conceptually their argument is strong. Theoretically, the idea that men and women with different testosterone levels have to be separated, so it's a sound argument. It just doesn't have evidence.
Okay, so Landile, here we are now, right? It's going to make a dramatic impact, I should imagine, psychologically. It's going to mess with many athletes. Where does this leave you as an organisation? What are you going to do, and what are you going to do for Caster?
Well, I think we need to give her as much support as we can. I mean, as an organisation, we're looking towards Tokyo, and we're looking for Caster to spearhead that movement towards Tokyo. She'll always be a pride and joy for us, and I don't think we would ever leave that. We'll take direction from where we need to take direction on how best to assist her. But it leaves us with a massive policy conundrum as an organisation about how are we addressing these issues of gender in terms of policy in sports in South Africa and actually globally. We need to also be looking at international federations to be looking at these issues across all boards.
And considering what a political figure she is, clearly she needs support there too.
No, 100%. And I think government will continue to give the support that they have given to her. SASCOC will continue to give the support that they have given to her. We are all 100% behind Custer. I don't think there's a doubt about that in anybody's mind.
And Ross, the next step, as far as you're concerned, what's going to happen now?
The ball is very much in Semenya's court now as to what she decides to do. She's got 4 options. One is she can retire. I hope she doesn't do that, but after the decade she's had, she could just go, you know what, this is just not worth it, I'm out. Number 2 is she can challenge this decision. If she does that, she has to go to the Swiss tribunal first, and that takes it away from the world of sport and towards human rights. And so that makes it a big deal societally, but that's her legal option if she chooses to pursue it. Third, she can take the medication as the policy dictates. If she does that, then she can continue to run 400, 800, 1500. But there will be questions as to whether she can maintain the same performances. I would be highly doubtful of it. And then the third thing is she can refuse the medication and instead run the events that are not covered by the policy. So that policy covers only 400, 800, 15. So she could become a 3,000 meter, 5,000 meter runner and try and make it in the longer distances. She's in a real bind because none of those options are attractive, and that's why this decision, sadly, is such a blow.
I know, an awful day for South Africans and her, clearly, and many women around the world. Ross Tucker and Luandile Simelane, thank you. Now, black economic empowerment is one of the tools created to fix South Africa's racialized inequality, but 25 years into our democracy, we have one of the highest rates of inequality in the world, which begs the question, has BEE failed? Then the controversial assisted suicide saga, why can't people choose to die rather than suffer?